and landlord and participant eligible expenses. Those are for the ones that are administered by our LSAs, and for the PHAs that bill us. We also take care of those expenses for those. And then there is a service area map that I want to draw your attention to before we get started, because it's kind of why we're here. So normally it's very colorful, but this is the LSA map with the CE regions map overlaid on top of it. So you can see that some regions are all the same block of color, and some are divided up. One of them as many as served by as many as 4 local subcontracting agencies. And Elaine and Nicole are from Region 11, which is just south of Indianapolis, consists of Johnson, Shelby, Brown, Bartholomew, Decatur, Jackson, and Jennings counties. And we'll go over the flow chart later in the presentation. And we're going to stop and we're going to talk. And these are just the slides are to keep my ADHD on task, in case you were wondering, and keep us moving our conversation forward. So next slide. The EHV program summary. This is the information on every HUD documentation about the EHV program, explaining that it's available through the American Rescue Plan Act, and they provide about 70,000 housing choice vouchers, or HCV, formerly known as Section 8, to local public housing authorities. And in October, they gave us, they announced that we were about at the halfway point. So of the 70,000 that 35,000 households were served. And there is a link in the slide for the EHV dashboard, and you can go on there. They just switched it up, so you can't click on it and go straight to the map where you can click on Indiana. You have to scroll down and go to the right now to get that information, but it tells you how we're doing across the state and across the country. And for us, our utilization just got over 50%. I think we're at 52 point something. And other housing authorities are doing better than we are, but as the balance of state, we've got some challenges. So in the first year and a half of the program, we're educating coordinated entry about the process and who's eligible and getting people referred. And now, all of a sudden, everybody's figured it out. So for April, I had 63 referrals, where I'm usually averaging about 35 or 40. So, and then it looks like May is probably gonna be about the same as that. So that's where we are with the EHV program. Next slide is the color copy of this map. And I wanted to start our discussion prior to the start of the EHV program. Elaine and Nicole didn't really interact very much, even though they're with the same agency. And I think in the beginning, when we were doing well in Region 11, we thought that it was because you were with the same agency and didn't really understand how divided things were. So if you want to start off with what it was like before we started working together between the two of you guys.
Yeah. Just like Liz said, so Elaine and I do both work for the same agency. However, she works in a different county than I do, and in different programming and things like that. So I did not know Elaine. I knew her name. I didn't know probably what she looked like. We had never really communicated until EHV came around. Since she does the coordinated entry side and the referrals, she would contact me with a, hey, I have this referral going up to Liz. Here's a little background situation. This is what you're gonna see when you get the referral, or different things going on with their living situation or children. So until EHV did come around, yeah, Elaine and I did not really work closely, didn't really know each other. I knew she was part of the agency, but like I said, we really didn't have any feelers for each other's programs.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add?
No, that was pretty much it. Like I was running one program in one county and she was running the other.
So when it comes to roles and responsibilities, these are the best practices that we've learned so far working with Region 11 and a couple of the other regions. So not everything we talk about is going to be exactly what you guys do, but so the CE lead agency, which in your region is Human Services Inc. and your side of it. Do you want to talk a little bit about?
So what we do, every week we run our prioritization list, go through, make sure everybody's up to date, and then talk with other partners about who would be a good fit for EHV versus some of our other programs that we offer, and then kind of go from there. Once we determine that, yeah, this may be the best fit for them, then my end of it on the CE end, we work with them to complete their packets and communicate with Nicole and Liz about kind of what they have going on and how that is going to play out in their housing search.
And then when the CE lead agency isn't the same as the LSA, a lot of times we have local partners, and you probably have local partners too, have the domestic violence shelters. Sometimes you get people who they will help identify and bring them to that meeting that you have. So that's what we mean by partnering agencies, the local domestic violence or another agency, the shelter.
Clearstone, they do mental health services, and so we use those together to kind of prioritize who needed to be chosen. Historically, when we would pull for programs, we never could get past the 13. And so there for a while, we would just, everybody that to kind of reduce that swell in the middle where people kind of get stuck, we decided, we're just gonna make these referrals, and that has worked well for us.
And in some regions, they make their decisions on who they're going to refer differently. They have to meet the minimum criteria, but you're saying that in your region, you take those that are scoring 13 and higher and you refer those.
Yeah.
So in other regions, I'm getting people who are scoring in the lower teens and sometimes in an 8 or a 9. But you prioritize those because they weren't moving.
Right.
And we've been reasonably successful. There are some that don't make it very far into the process, or they'll disengage for a while and then re-engage when we're about ready to expire them. But we expect that, but overall, we've had really good outcomes for those. So the roles and responsibilities for Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, EHB and HCB team. Jeff chuckled when I referred to the EHV team. It's really just me. But I have the HCB team if I need them. So once I receive the referrals from coordinated entry, I enter them on a spreadsheet. I go into HMIS. I make sure that their VI STAT is in there and that it's an appropriate score. And then I start looking through the packet to see what's there and what's missing. Most of the time I can move forward. Sometimes they're too incomplete. The TIF, or the tenant information form, is a 4-page portion of that application, and I can use it as a self-declaration if there are documents missing in order to move forward with an EHB, which you can't do with other programs. Those things have to be filled out and filled out completely. I have to be able to read them, which is sometimes a bit difficult. So once I'm able to move those forward, in Region 11, I send those to Nicole. You get an introductory email with all the EHV reminders of who's responsible for what. And then they can access the information that I upload into our system. And they go from there, reaching out to the client. They are responsible for anything that they would normally be responsible for an HCB participant. And on top of that, we have a monthly case conference per region in most of the regions, but not all of them. And we always attend, except when I have busy family stuff going on. But it's been a good opportunity to find out what's going on and keep up with where people are in the process. So.
Also a good reminder to kind of reach out to the people that are out searching and like, okay, I haven't heard from them. Before we have our meeting, follow up.
So how have processes changed because of EHV for you guys?
We're communicating a whole lot more.
You're
Yeah,
best friends now.
we're best friends. I just feel like if you have good communication with the referring COC and the housing specialist who receives your EHV vouchers, or referrals, I'm sorry, it can work, and it can work well. Because there are times where I am trying to get a hold of a participant that has a voucher and I can't, or I have questions, or, anything. I can reach out to Elaine and she tries to track them down for me, or vice versa. If she's trying to do an update on her, you're gonna have to say it because I don't know.
Coordinated.
Yeah, so she's trying to do an update on that, and she can't get a hold of someone, she'll call me, because typically once they get the referral into Elaine, and Elaine sends it to Liz, and then it comes to me, and then they know that I'm taking care of their voucher, then it's more communication with me than it is with Elaine at that point. So, it's just really good communication if we need it to be about specific participants or those who have the voucher, or someone who is coming in on a voucher. If I get a referral from Liz, and their phone number no longer works, because, that's usually what happens, or I shoot them an email to try to make contact, to do the briefing and issue their vouchers, and I just don't hear anything, then I go back to Elaine, and then Elaine tracks them down for me, or, honestly, just having good communication, period, with whoever is administering those EHV vouchers for you, is really key. I will say it and I will repeat it 100 times. I did not know Elaine before EHV. I had no communication with her. Yes, I worked for the agency. I knew of the programs, but I didn't know specifics of her programs, coordinated entry, HMIS. That's not really my forte. So, just keeping good communication with the housing authority that does administer. It's been great, and yes, we're best friends now, so.
So for those who it's not the same agency, I imagine that would be it could be a barrier. And in some regions, the case conferencing that we do is the only time that they come together. And sometimes they're updating each other and then coming to our meeting, which is something that you frequently do. You mostly already have things going on that you've updated each other about before we get to our meeting, and that's really helpful. And then, the next two slides that I also gave you handouts about are the roles and responsibilities, and this just breaks it down in a flow chart that is easy. It's easy to see what happens in what order. It's a little bit different in some regions, but this is from our experience and working best in the regions that are getting people leased out. So we already explained, start with coordinated entry assessment. They go on the prioritization list, they come off of the prioritization list, and are referred to IHCDA. And then, and once they come to me, they're logged, they're reviewed, they're approved or denied, and then they're assigned, and then there are steps on here for once they're housed. So a little more information about the monthly EHV case conference. We do this in most regions. If we are not already doing it in your region, please reach out and let me know. In some of the regions, I have to join your meetings, and I'm trying to get myself organized so that I can do that. Some of you have them twice a month, and I need to be there once a month, so I need to revamp my schedule so that I don't have any overlaps. But we review the new referrals. We talk about, even if they're not assigned yet, if I'm still working on the coordinated entry side and I'm waiting for a document before I can send it on, I'm still talking about that person in case conference. And when we have, one of our larger regions has several people participating, sometimes our clients have been through several organizations. So when they come and we're talking to them about them in this meeting, you're already familiar with them. So they may be looking for them to complete this piece of paperwork or get this documentation, but you may have had contact with them within the last 2 weeks, just because. So it's good to talk about them, even if we don't have them referred to me yet and assigned out. So we talk about the housing search process, where they're at. Sometimes there's a delay in issuing the voucher. So we know when that voucher is issued, when they've been briefed. And the briefing is when the LSA goes over the program with the client. So the EHV program is essentially the regular HCB program with some extra benefits. So they still have to understand the rules and their responsibilities for that program. So that's what the briefing entails. When they've had their voucher for a little bit and they haven't turned in what we call an RTA.
Residency.
Residency, yeah. Sometimes I use acronyms so often I forget what the words mean, yes. So if they haven't turned one in yet, we'll find out what those barriers are. So either they're having trouble finding a unit that suits them, or they've got criminal background issues. Sometimes they need an accessible unit and they're having trouble finding one. So we talk about those things in this meeting and we enter it in the notes so that if it comes down to deciding whether we're going to give them an extension or not, we've already documented why we're going to do that. So it's a non-issue as long as they are still engaging in the process. Sometimes we have, like I said before, we'll have people who just kind of fall off for a while and then re-engage. Sometimes we can re-engage and we can get them housed quickly. Sometimes we need to expire them and ask for a new referral because all of the information that we have is too old to use. And I would say probably about, I had a few that have been referred back that then again have expired, but I think most of the time they are then engaging and getting housed.
Question.
Yeah, are we able to ask questions?
Yeah.
Okay, so does the client's voucher start when you refer them to the housing authority or when the housing authority meets with the client to do the briefing?
So IHCDA, for my part of IHCDA, we are the housing authority, and we contract with the LSA. So I send it to her, and so the voucher doesn't start until she meets with them for the briefing. Now, if they are not staying in our jurisdiction and I'm sending them to another housing authority, I issue a voucher, and then when they get them, they issue another voucher. But it stays like our voucher runs its course. And then they have to give them an additional 30 days. Yes.
So we were talking about, if they kind of mess up the first time, but we can re-engage them and we do it again. I've only been doing this is my second cycle, but the problem I've run into both times in Region 1 is our vouchers get suspended. Like we went like October through March. We were too many vouchers, not enough spots. We got shut down. We had a huge gap. And then we went again. So now we're doing this again, except now we have more vouchers, less. So who knows like when we're gonna have vouchers again. So I can't restart people. Then I just lose them. So I just lose them? Or like if we ever come back online again, then I can start them again? Like how does that work?
So Region 1 has had some things going on that not everybody is aware of.
Oh, is that what's wrong with us? Okay. I have no idea.
So,
If we need to talk after, that's fine. I just am wondering, like, am I allowed to if I get them back at some point in the fall when we're restarted, am I allowed to reapply for them again? Or no?
We'll have to talk about that.
That's it,
Yeah.
okay, because in my case, I'm dealing with people who have serious mental illness.
Right.
And the reason that they're falling apart is because of their mental illness.
Right.
So that's like the context of my, okay. You kind of answered my question.
Okay. Let's see if I missed anything. Okay, so if we can't approve 30-day extensions, we do that as long as they're still engaged. Ultimately, it is the client who's responsible for remaining connected to the LSA. In some regions, they are much more connected because they have higher needs. They're more connected to the referring staff, and it's just, it depends on the region, because it's been a very different experience across the state. So sometimes I have had referring staff that keep nudging them that this is you need to talk to Nicole. Like, I can do this part, but that is Nicole, and you need to remain in communication with Nicole. So that may become a problem. Ultimately, they do need to communicate with Nicole, because if they get housed, then in 9.5 or 10 months, she's going to be asking for documentation for that annual recertification. So they need to have that rapport built and be able to get that documentation done. Okay, so what are the benefits for you guys of participating in the EHV case conference for you and your shared clients?
The ongoing communication, being able to, like you said, sometimes they connect with the CE, those BIS cadets are pretty intimate, and they get to know, they feel like they know you, and so they'll maybe tell me stuff that they don't want to tell Nicole because they're worried that it would affect their housing or those kind of things. So that ongoing communication, we also will share like, hey, I saw the partner on Zillow for, bigger families or those kind of things.
Yeah, and I think too, as well with the case conferences, like, so sometimes, you have those just kind of iffy. And if I haven't had communication or if Elaine has, and sometimes, we're all busy, like we've had quite a few at one time. So, there's been times where it's, do we extend this person, or have you had communication that they are still engaging in housing search, and then, we'll bring Liz into it. Liz, what do you think? Like, what should we do here? Or, so it's really nice to have that monthly case conference meeting, with all of us, just to kind of hash out some things as well. Plus, like Liz said, sometimes she has some, people on the spreadsheet that I haven't gotten a referral for. But Elaine knows what's going on with them. Liz is, I haven't got it to you yet, I'm working on it, and then I get a little gist of the actual referral that's coming to me. So, it's just communication all around, honestly, and then, with the participants who are searching or have an open voucher.
And I just wanted to ask a little bit more about that, because I do know about the HCB side. How would you say, as far as getting people housed, the impact of this communication and this relationship versus the regular HCB program where you don't have all of that?
Yeah, so when it's regular HCB, they're on their own, right? There's no caseworker, there's no like backup. I mean, of course, the housing specialist is there for them if they have any questions or whatnot. But there is no additional support for HCB people searching for housing as there is with EHV and the referrals through coordinated entry. There's Carrie and Elaine over there, and they both have, good relationships with some of the participants that come in. So it is nice to have that extra backup and that extra knowledge of the specific person you're working with, rather than regular HCB. It's just you and the participant, and it's like they tell you something and that's it. It's a one-way street, where with the EHV, you kind of get a little bit more additional information that of how you can assist.
Okay, and the next slide is the housing search. So we've touched on that a little bit. So you would provide the resources that you would normally provide for an HGV participant,
Yes.
which is probably
Landlord list.
The websites and things like that. So you may be aware of existing landlords that might be willing to assist with EHVs because of the incentives. And then I was going to ask about how many landlords do you think had engaged that maybe would not have if it wasn't for the EHV and those incentives? Because I know you've got some landlords that were your go-to people, but have you noticed that you've gotten new landlords that maybe didn't participate before?
Yeah, we have. I don't know, what would your number be, do you think? So another thing with that too is, and I don't know if I'm stepping on this, but, so, Bartholomew County, has a housing authority, and then
You're fine, go ahead.
that doesn't share jurisdiction with regular HCV vouchers. So we administer Bartholomew County just outside city limits. So this was also very different for me as well, because of the fact that I have never leased any regular HCV up in the city limits of Columbus.
So just to explain that, so in a handful of areas, the PHA didn't want to administer the EHVs, so we have asked our LSAs to administer in their jurisdiction. So they normally wouldn't do that, and we enter into an MOU so that she can administer in Columbus. So and
Just for the specific,
just for EHV, you do BASH.
Or yes, BASH. Yes.
Yeah, so the rest of Columbus is regular HCV participants that have to go through the Columbus Housing Authority. And the low barrier that we have with EHV is that they're eligible, as far as the criminal background check, the only thing that makes them ineligible is if they are a registered sex offender or if they've been convicted of manufacturing methamphetamine on federal property. So Columbus has a much stricter background policy. So they reject basically most of the clients that are coming to us through EHV. So they didn't want to administer. So we asked for an MOU and for Nicole to be able to administer in Columbus.
No, go ahead. And they don't even accept our reports for regular HCV people either, if there's any double thing. However, okay, so back to the landlord. So I was not familiar with the city limits of Columbus and Bartholomew County. So it kind of opened an eye for me as well. And we were able to get new landlords that for one I've never worked with. And Elaine did work with on some of her other programs. But it did kind of open up a bigger, I don't know, just
A pool of landlords
Yes.
that we could
yes,
work with.
it did. And then with the incentives, I think that is it's a plus with the EHV vouchers. Landlords are willing to kind of oversee some of the things with the EHV clients that they necessarily might not with the HCV, just because of that landlord incentive that they receive. They're guaranteed the deposit when we can assist, when they send the deposit agreement, application fees. I mean, there's a list of things that we can assist with HCV that we do not with regular HCV. So I do think that EHV vouchers and the incentives has opened up, like Lauren said, a pool of newer landlords that we did not work with regular HCV.
To clarify, so your greater assistance, so can these vouchers then help with deposits, first month's rent, that sort of thing for a regular HVC?
It's on the back side of this. And so,
That's huge.
yes, so, the landlord incentive for a brand new landlord is $1,000 paid at the beginning of that initial, half payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other half at the end, for that final payment of the initial half contract. So they get half of it at the beginning and half at the end. And we have several landlords who have housed several EHV participants. So it's $1,000 for the first, and it's $500 for each after. Yes.
How do you have IGDA or pay for the application fees? I've never figured that out.
So for the application fees, I don't have a credit card. I can just, so things like the application fees or moving fees and things like that.
Is it reimbursement?
It's a reimbursement. So somebody else, either the client or another agency has to take care of that, and then we reimburse.
Okay, because like in my case, it's Pat that's paying the application fees. But I wouldn't then get reimbursed by you guys. That would be wrong. Wouldn't it?
If you personally pay for it, if you turn in a claim form, it will come.
It's past people.
If someone's covering it and they fill out the claim, well, and Nico would have to be the one to
Yeah.
fill the claim form, but.
I have a question regarding the incentive program. I almost lost the landlord due to this because he waited 2 months on that, and so he lost rent. He could have rented to someone else.
Right. So when, it's the same with EHV and HCV, but they have to turn in all of the paperwork that is required at the beginning in order to get paid. So they have a deadline to send stuff to us so that we can get it processed, so that they can get it at the beginning of that next month. So if the landlord is slow turning things in to the LSA, then it's going to make that come later, and that's not on the client, that's on the landlord. Is there anything else that might delay that?
We just have to have the paperwork in, and you get it locked in prior to half run
Right.
that month in order for.
Yeah, and I've had a handful that is like, it takes a real, we'll have 2 case conference meetings where they're like, they've moved in, I'm like, great, where's my email? Like I can't do anything until you tell me it's all ready. So, so I know that sometimes there is a delay, but as long as it gets to us in time for half run, it should be there at the beginning of the following month. And that's
I
the
think
same
that's a
for.
lot on our housing authority because they only allow move-ins on the 1st and the 15th.
Right, and ours doesn't.
And that, so it's our region
Yes.
with that 1st and 15th. So they delayed that check for 15 days.
So I will say the half contract is guaranteed the first payment to the landlord by the 60th day of the half contract. So in the half contract, the landlord is informed that Lubbock Housing Authority has 60 days to make the first payment. And that first payment might have 2 months of half on it, but.
It still doesn't make landlords happy.
He doesn't make landlords happy, he doesn't
No.
want to make you want to work with you.
Yeah.
Right, but it's in the documentation.
It's in the
There.
documentation.
They agreed to it. So, yeah.
And with that, sorry, just one more question. This is the reason why I signed up for this meeting is because I was told that there's grant funding for wraparound services with EHV.
And Jack can answer those questions.
It's you.
Why are you up
I'm just glad he's not heckling.
There
If
is
it's
service
not part of
funding,
the tax.
that we issued an RFP last December-ish, and those went to our board for approval in March. Those contracts are being finalized with the community mental health centers around the state. Not every county had a CMHC apply that covers that county, so it's gonna depend on where you are. I'm not gonna do it off memory. There's about 5 grantee CMHCs that have been selected for awards. We'll do a second round RFP at some point to try to get more counties covered. But we're depending on the CMHC in that area applying for the funding. So, but the service contracts, which are being finalized now, the 5 CMHCs that were selected, they cover any EHV household. So regardless of they're with the IHCDA or with another local housing authority, they are eligible for those services. And the CMHCs can claim any service expense against that, that they're not getting reimbursed by Medicaid for.
Huh. I missed that one.
But those contracts are not finalized yet, so. we'll see.
So my next question to you guys is, how you work together in the housing search, which we've touched on a little bit, but specifically, working through client barriers, and convincing those landlords, to accept our clients can be.
So I think, again, communication with both us and the landlords, trying to find housing that's a good fit. Like we had a client that went to an apartment, and her son had some special needs and caused damage. And so then it was like, okay, now we gotta find a house, and kind of knowing some of those things up front of what kind of housing they would be most beneficial.
I have a question about that very specific thing. I'm about to actually house someone to have that very scenario and not a house. And I know it's not gonna end well for the very reason you just said, but my EHV will not cover a standalone thing for them. And I just, curious how you solved that problem. Or did you not?
No, I mean, we did not. She got
Okay.
evicted from that,
From that unit.
apartment complex. And it was a little, there's a big
It's,
thing going
okay,
on right
yeah,
now
okay.
anyway with that.
So, well, then I'll know I'm not by myself. I'll think of you.
No, no, you're not at all. And then, I mean, just with EHV alone, it's difficult to house, some anyway, just because of the barriers or the backgrounds and landlords wanting to screen them and us trying to find landlords who aren't going to dig and, do a deep screen.
Right.
Because we off the bat know that, this specific apartment complex is going to screen your credit, is going to screen your background
right,
for this
right.
many years. And there's no point of even
Yeah.
trying to put an
Right.
application in and paying the fee. So, we just try to see what we can find for them. Elaine had a landlord that worked with one of her other programs too, off the bat, and he had a lot of units out there. And surprisingly and honestly, he just started flipping flipping little apartments, 1-2 bedrooms, just getting them ready. And our EHV, people in the Bartholomew County area, we were just straight referring, like,
Yeah.
here,
yeah.
go talk to Travis, go,
Yeah,
go,
I had one
right?
like that.
Yeah,
It's almost
so-
full now,
because-
and I'm gonna sit and cry when it's
Yeah.
leaving.
We knew that he would work with us. We knew, that he was aware of the payment standards. He was,
Second chance
95%
landlord that.
of the time would do utilities included for these, participants. And, so yeah, I just think her having that one,
Just
that
the one,
one-
just the one. It
that
helps a
one
lot.
landlord, in that area that was already on, But then again, you know, he liked the incentive, got the 1,000 the first, the next one was 500, and that we just kept referring. And then kind of like knowing your area and in the complexes or even, private landlords.
Right.
You know, that aren't going to do the digging and stuff like that,
Right.
and, that are reasonable. But you, like Elaine said, you do kind of have to like know of the client,
Yeah.
because you don't want to burn a bridge either.
Oh, no,
Especially
I
with some of
know.
our
I was
private
just curious how
landlords.
you got an apartment into a house with the money. The money situation, but it sounds like it's just not possible. So, all right.
So is it because of like the payment standard in your area?
Yeah, the
Or is it
payment standard
apartment
just
or
won't
house?
cover, it just
Okay.
won't cover a house.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you knew something magical that got you from house to apartment, but this much money. No, you don't. Okay.
It
Just worth a
really
shot.
depends, yeah. I mean, we have house in houses, but it's just, it really is just.
The
the
landlord I have that does that, I wouldn't have my dog rent from him. I just wouldn't. I did it, I made that mistake once, I'll never do it again. The man is horrible.
Yeah,
So,
There,
no.
there are those out there.
Yeah, nope,
absolutely,
I
yeah.
will not do that again. It was
Yeah.
a disaster area. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
and you know who they are, right? So,
Yeah,
I mean, we have,
Nope.
yeah, we have those two that we just won't.
Special place.
Just kind of-
Anyway.
So ensuring that once the clients are housed, they remain housed. That starts with the briefing process, making sure they understand the rules and responsibilities that they have as a tenant. Maintaining good rapport with the client, the landlord, making sure that utilities are not remaining in the landlord's name. One of the issues we had early on, we can pay the arrears also, so we can pay arrears and security deposit or utility deposits. But one of the issues that we had at the beginning was in one region, the landlords were letting the clients move into the unit before getting it in their name. And then they were kicking our clients out because they didn't get it in their name, even though we paid the arrears, and things like that. So we've kind of closed that loop so that doesn't happen anymore, but we did have that issue in the beginning. And making sure that the client understands the move process. When they've been in the unit for a year and they want to move, they don't just up and move, and so that they can continue to be housed. And then the annual recertification. So as far, and I know we have some that have come around on their 1 year. So as far as keeping them housed, what would you say? How do you guys work together to do that?
So as long as they are, you know, getting their recertification packets from me, turning them in, getting right documentation, and all of that good stuff, we're good. It has came around that now we are running into recertification time with the EHVs, and I have had a couple that have not responded. So then I call Elaine and I'm like, hey, you know, have you heard from this person? Recertification's coming up. And we just try and track them down. Of course, with regular HCV, it's no different if they have an EHV, you send them out their first notification letter of appointment or mail-in packet, and then I send them a second, and if they still don't respond, so then we're trying to kind of like specifically work harder, I guess you would say, together to track them down so that they are remaining housed and are not in the situation that they were a year ago.
That scenario just like sparked kind of an issue I feel like that our region is having, and so I'm just very curious because there's definitely a disconnect from, so this is our region, disconnect from when someone is housed, but then, so like Elaine, like for example, you're like supportive services initially, they get housed, and then for us, we're kind of, you know, like hands off them because they're not on our caseload anymore, and they have been successfully housed, they're stable, and so therefore, now we're not billing that time, and they're supposed to be on their own, even though they're high priority clients and they have a lot of barriers. But then let's say recertification comes up and they can't get a hold of the client and then they reach out to the support service again. But then it's so difficult because we already have our caseload, we already have so much going on. And then now we feel this responsibility of engaging this client again, and it's so difficult. And that's why I'm really excited about the support services, like, it finally is going, because I think that's the missing piece. Because these are high barrier clients, and then it just adds so much more. And I felt that when you guys were talking about it, and I was like, gosh, I just wish there was a better system. But I don't know if there's like any tips for, I don't know, for like, if you feel that same way, where you're just like,
Well,
oh man.
again, because, as coordinated entry, we want to get them housed and get them off the coordinated entry list. And so part of that is keeping them off the coordinated entry list. And so if I can make one phone call and get that person to call Nicole, as opposed to them falling back on the list, I'm gonna make the phone call.
Yes, and we end up doing that too, because our case managers are like, oh my gosh, not this family, right? Like, they're like, no, we have to, but then that takes away that time and energy from their normal job responsibilities in the agency, and that's what's so difficult, but we feel that, we don't want them to come back.
Right.
And that's the,
And the increased communication, you kind of know, if you've got somebody that's attending this case conference meeting, you kind of know how things are going. And if, like we've started, if pulling people back up, so we don't keep them on our conversation once they're housed, but if there are any issues, we bring them back to the top of the list and we talk about them until things are resolved. So if there's somebody from your agency attending the meeting, then you kind of know what's going on and if you need to re-engage, because if not, then they're coming through the system from the beginning again, instead of just picking up and getting them back to.
not waiting for the emergency.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, emergency, no, that's a great tip, because I do have someone for agency, so I think that's maybe our disconnect internally, that we can maybe solve.
I was gonna add to that, like, that's where I use the authorized rep form, because if I have someone in front of me that I know that, like, I tend to struggle with, or like, they lose their phone a lot, or there's just some reason there's gonna be a break in communication, then I will talk about the importance of that in that moment. And if it's not gonna be me, then I'll just tell them that it needs to be someone that the state can get a hold of, that can get a hold of you. And then
Somebody
usually there's
local.
someone that
Right.
everyone's tied to, even my homeless clients have usually a person that they don't lose connect with. And that's where we use that form, because that way I know, I always express to them, it needs to be someone that's number does not change, that will be there to hear what the message is, to get it to you.
Thank you for
That's not
stressing
going
that.
to run out of minutes.
Yes, correct,
Yeah.
I tell them it has to be a solid person, and if you want it to be me, that's fine, and then that puts it off of me, because I don't want to put it in my phone, then when my phone breaks tomorrow, then I don't have it in my calendar next year.
Right.
You guys are gonna reach out to me, and then I'm gonna be able to go find that person, hopefully, and be like,
And
hey,
know
it's
where they
time.
used to frequent and who to
Correct.
talk to,
Well, a
yeah.
lot of them still come to where I'm at, luckily, because I work at a day service center, so if they need that support, they'll come there anyways naturally, so that's what I'll tend to do. And it feels a little bit less, I guess, wakeful for me, because I don't feel like I'm gonna be accountable, like, oh goodness, I'm gonna have to remember that. Like, I know that if it comes my way, then I can handle it in the moment of it coming. And I don't have that like on me, feeling like, oh, I'm gonna have to get up, reach out to him around this time to make sure, you know what I mean? Because it's just one less thing. I don't wanna feel like I dropped the ball on somebody's housing. And I know it wouldn't be my ball dropped, but it still feels that way, you know? Their failures are mine, I own them, so, that's usually what I do with that form.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, Elaine or Carrie are on our alternate contact form as well. But, it's just, right, it's sometimes it's finding needle in a haystack with some of them, and, or did you put someone down and, yes, they were accountable at the time, but now they're not, because it's a year later,
They
so,
work out.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I usually stress
Great
that too.
form, Yeah.
Grandma, somebody that's not, right down the people.
Right.
For sure.
Go ahead.
So long-term, so we got what, 700 vouchers Indiana did total?
I don't remember. I know I had 300 and.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So in
yeah.
theory, this is new money that can stick around in our system as long as that same person is using that voucher, correct? And the minute that person no longer needs that voucher, it's gonna go back to DC. Is that how that works?
When does that happen? Because right now, we're just,
They can continue to be reused until September 31st this year.
Oh, really? That's it?
And then after that, if you have a voucher that has never been utilized, it can be leased up with an EHV household. But if there's someone in the EHV household that is terminated or passes away or whatever, that voucher is.
So you get someone housed, let's say, just now, you still got several more that you need to get housed, you get somebody housed in July, September comes, they're using the money from the EHC program. A year later, are they gonna be,
They'll just transfer to a normal HCV voucher.
okay, and do the regular HCV voucher rules apply then to that person?
Yes, they always did.
They also,
They always did coming in to, yeah, so, coming on to, after we receive a referral from Liz, EHV, people go through the same exact thing that a regular HCV person does. All of the rules, regulations, reasons for termination, everything that an HCV voucher participant is the same exact thing for EHV.
with the exception
With the
of,
exception of the background check and,
So that remains, you don't have to worry about.
yeah, that is only at admission, so if
Yeah.
someone's restarting,
Okay,
we don't
so
check the
research,
background.
you don't have to.
Right.
That's the same for HCV, we only
And
check
if that
the
person continues to live in that place with that voucher for 10 years, that money is good? That's.
yeah, they eventually, I'm not sure exactly when that'll be Jeff's question, but they'll eventually roll over to regular HCV voucher.
Yeah.
So they'll utilize then HCV funds.
As long as they're doing their annual recertifications and they're
It's a long
abiding by
program.
abiding by the rules of the program.
HQS inspections is the same exact thing for EHV as it is for a regular HCV voucher.
There is, all the way back there.
Yeah, so, sorry to Nancy, but, so clients can only come to you through coordinated entry? Or
Yes.
other- Okay, and so, someone who's already housed wouldn't be eligible for this program? Okay, because it says people who are at risk of homelessness are eligible.
Yes,
I don't
so
know how that works.
that's where it falls into the people who are in rapid rehousing who would have been eligible for a permanent supportive housing unit if there was one available. So they scored high enough for permanent supportive housing, but there wasn't any available, so they got rapid rehousing.
Wherever you have
So
it.
those people are the ones that are eligible for an EHV as that funding is ending.
So I've used it when they're 14 days, like facing eviction, is that not right? Because I've had the landlord be able to say, yes, in 14 days, this will be the eviction date. Is that not something we should be doing?
It'd be
The
lit-
landlord would be willing to work with them, though. That's the thing, that's really different. Like, it's a landlord who's willing to forego it if they can get this in place, that they're supportive and they want this person to succeed.
Right, so when they come to me from coordinated entry, I don't necessarily know that part.
Okay.
Because it's going to take a minute for them to fill out the paperwork and do all those things.
at least.
Yeah, that's how I get in coordinated entry. That's the other way you can do it, is if you can get a partnership with your landlord and the person's in imminent danger of being evicted on a certain date, you get them into coordinated entry within 14 days of that date, then they are now considered because they're in coordinated entry.
So it's the same coordinated entry prioritization criteria as any other PSH program. So, based on your local CE region prioritization criteria, you refer, which might mean referring that VIS for that 9, or it might be 13, whatever your local regions. VIS for that small requirement is for PSH, you can refer it.
So I have two questions. The first question is, when this program rolls over into a regular housing choice voucher, and if someone wanted to move units, they would then have to come up with a security deposit on their own, as you would with a regular. Okay.
Well, the thing is though, they'll get their security deposit back from their initial lease. So we pay for the security deposit the first time, and as long as they stay there for the full 12 months.
Oh, that goes to them?
If, I mean, obviously after any deduction.
Right. I didn't realize that. I thought it went back to you. Oh, I've been lying about that for months. All right, so here's the next question though, because I cannot tell you how much I rely on this program. I rely on it probably too much. So when it comes to, like, it's gonna come to an end, and then what do we do? Like, we don't, what do we do?
All things turn to death.
That's like not a thing.
So we do have, within our HCD admin plan, a limited preference for folks coming off of coordinated entry. Yes. Obviously EHV is the same thing, so like those folks are just going to EHV because EHV has the extra security deposit and services, whereas HCD doesn't have any of those. But once EHV is fully utilized, I imagine that limited preference.
If I'm understanding you correctly, it has to be fully utilized by the end of September. No, is that
It's kind of weird.
maybe I don't want to know.
No, we have, as long as, unless HUD recaptures with it, which they have not said they're gonna do yet, we have as long as we need to get it fully utilized. But after September 31st, we can't reutilize a voucher once.
Oh, I see. So my folks that loved it, we can't reuse those after that. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because I don't know what I would do without that. I've used, I don't know, 30 of them since the beginning of the year, I think.
Awesome. All right, that's cool. That's good to know.
Does anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
I was just curious about the briefing. I'm disconnected from that because it's the other agency that provides the packet. So it appears to me that they just get all this paperwork in the mail and that's their like briefing. How do you guys?
It really just depends on the housing authority and how they do it. So pre-COVID and then now coming back out of COVID, we do meet face-to-face if we can. There is also a briefing video that we've been provided through IHCDA that we can, it's a YouTube link, so we can email that to them. Usually if I do a briefing that way, just because, like I said, so I oversee a 5-county region. I am the Housing Choice Voucher Director of our whole agency as well. So I'm in one county, they could possibly be 2 counties away. So if there's not timing or things like that, so I will email them a briefing, but when I am discussing it on the phone with them, it is, here's the link to the briefing video. You need to watch this video. It goes over our rules and regulations of the program. If there is a reasonable accommodation, if there is a need, I will go through family rights and obligations with them over the phone. I accommodate as much as I need to for that specific person. So, it just kind of depends on the caseworker.
Yeah, and some regions do it differently. Some, when they started doing, for COVID, they are still doing that remotely. So they will send out the packet and then some of them will have a briefing phone call where they either by phone or by video, they're going over the packet with them. But it's not a completed briefing process until they get the paperwork back. So sometimes we'll have clients that will have an active voucher out there and they've kind of sort of been briefed, but they didn't turn in their paperwork. So sometimes if you have a client that isn't eligible for an extension, it's because they just kind of disappeared and didn't finish this process. So I can't extend them if they haven't gotten us everything we need.
And that's where the referring agency did that part, most likely, which is what I usually see. I was just curious how that's did it.
And it's time consuming, it is. And sometimes Carrie and Elaine will sit down with our people and do help with the briefing with them and go over things for me. One, they could be housed at the Horizon houses where her office is, or they're just there in the area.
In our
and
region.
they're just,
In our region, Columbus has like a free public transportation, and so it's easier to get to us than it is to get to Greensburg or.
I've been to come visit there. I've reached out 2 or 3 times because I'd like to mimic our Horizon House. I'd like to mimic our day shelter similar to yours, but no one wants.
I don't have a day shelter.
Horizon House is a day shelter, isn't it?
In Columbus. I think you're talking about the one in Indy.
It's a day shelter.
You get a lot of calls from them too.
All right, thank you so much, everybody. Especially, we would love to thank our lovely presenters. Thank you to, again, Elaine Breek, Nicole McCarter, and Liz Shun for the wonderful insights you've provided on EHV and HCV, as well as, of course, yourselves, for answering the questions that were coming up during the session.